You gonna start again?
Okay.
This is how you turn
Shoot.
it down.
Go ahead.
So, are we back in business?
We are.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, the last thing I was just talking about was I think the need for us to figure out, and not only us as professionals, but also we should all put our thinking cap on how we can work on pervious driving surfaces, not just walking surfaces. When we think about how much asphalt and concrete is being used for us to drive on, I think there's a great need for us to open that Pandora's box. That being said, I have been at times working with Stencil, which is a company in Cecil County, and they're making special sand clay mixes. They, for example, produce the sand clay mix that is being used in Longwood Gardens, which I'm sure we all know. That's what we walk on, or also at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. So those are special mixes out of clay, sand, gravel, and sometimes they also add a special binding material to hold it more together. I couldn't really see this in 83, but those are alternatives for residential driving surfaces. So, and then that's really what I can think of right now in regards to flat surfaces. And then, of course, we're building walls, and and especially retaining walls, where we want to allow water behind these walls to penetrate these walls and go through these walls. That's why we like dry stack walls, and usually they're being constructed with a crusher run base, 4-inch crusher run base, and then the wall is being constructed either way out of fieldstone, which is surface collected stone out of usually Pennsylvania or also Western Maryland. That is the local stone that we are used to buying here. It could also be quarried stone that would be then colonial, which is basically a blue stone made as a wall stone. Could be granite, could be sandstone out of Western Maryland. And so those would be pieces that are very rectangular, very square, very flat, and a very tight joint on a wall, where fieldstone is usually by far more rustic. And Sandy also has some photographs or some slides about the different types of walls in her slideshow.
But maybe we'll make this more of a dialogue if you're okay with that.
I would be happy to.
It's hard for me to keep my mouth shut. But to go back to the questions that we put up here, I mean, they're clear from a sustainability point of view, why pervious is better than impervious.
Right.
Well, what is pervious?
Right. I mean, since we're all concerned about the Chesapeake Bay, I think that is really one of the key words that we in Maryland are familiar with. So we want to see that water can penetrate the ground and raise the water table. No, I live in northern Baltimore County, and I do not have public water. I have a well on my property, and I enjoy every day the good quality water that comes out of the faucet, and is not being washed into the Chesapeake Bay with lots of pollutions. So that's why, and of course, ultimately it helps the animal life in Maryland and us as consumers. So
yeah,
I think that's why we really want to encourage this kind of hardscapes and landscaping. It wasn't that popular when I started working, like about 35 years ago. And it has become more and more important over the years to pay attention to runoff, to erosion control, water retention, etc., etc. Lots of my colleagues make lots of money with that these days. I personally just build patios and walkways, etc., and try to be as responsible as I possibly can be in that regard. So
we talked about porous surfaces and permeable.
right. So permeable surfaces, of course, gravel is probably the most likely and the most permeable surface we could have, and we do this quite a bit these days. A lot of people enjoy outside spaces where they have a patio space that is gravel. A walkway could be another walking surface. I was just, before I came into the Zoom meeting, I was at a customer's house in Mount Washington. They have a fire pit with rustic wooden furniture, and the surface is gravel. Wonderful setting, and I think a good way of having a patio and still helping the environment. So that, of course, will give us the best result in regards to permeable surfaces. And then, of course, there are other options. Reclaimed cobblestones is a beautiful way of doing a patio with wide joints, or stepping stone pathways through the landscape, especially with wide joints. So we are allowing this water to penetrate the ground instead of sealing it off. Yeah. Also, this picture right here, wide joints planted possibly with Thymus albus or mazes in between. Very good way of allowing water to penetrate the ground underneath. Yeah, again, stepping stone surfaces, so it will take us from place A to B, but there's lots of opportunity for water to go into the ground, or even areas where there is a concrete walkway that is cracking. There are opportunities for plant material to grow, for water to penetrate the ground. So there are lots and lots and lots of opportunities. Yeah, and so there, a situation similar to what I talked about earlier, fire pit, which become more and more popular. Now is the time in the fall to come together with friends, and I think especially COVID produced a lot of fire pits, vegetable gardens and fire pits in Baltimore, and especially when the joints can be stone dust or a fine gravel, a lot of water allows to go into the ground. A lot of patios are being done with polymer sand, which really seals the surface quite a bit, and it does not allow a lot of water to go into the ground underneath. So, and so Sandy is watching the slide. So why choose dry stone wall? Well, there are many reasons to choose a dry stone wall. I think first of all, when I meet a client, we look at what is their need and what is the situation in their landscape and what is appropriate. And so many times a dry laid wall is a relatively inexpensive way to hold a slope and to retain soil that pushes from behind, and of course, other than mortared walls and concrete walls and block walls, a dry stack wall will allow water to penetrate through. That can be very charming over time, especially when there are shady conditions where walls start to moss up, and other plant material also can grow into wall. Even so, this is actually a picture I just brought in this evening. This is a stone wall in Cornwall, England, and I just recently was there 2 weeks ago. Even so, it's a mortared wall, but it's an old cracked wall and these little ferns, and I have no idea what I'm looking at. Maybe the master gardeners would know what this daisy looking plant is. But isn't that charming to see this wall? And in fact, I would, all of you that are listening right now, like to give you some homework, because some years back, I don't know if any one of you knows Jamie Brown, who is a very important landscape architect in Baltimore. And so we were involved in a project, and one of the things he had asked me to do was to find this particular fern that we see on this picture. And there was no place in this world where I could buy this fern. And so I would say there's a great need of plant material that can grow in walls. So if you people want to start a movement here and grow wall plants, I think you could really make a difference.
So let's, whoops. So, wait, I'm sorry, I hit end first. But I don't think I have any more pictures of dry stone walls, so you'll just have to talk about it.
Sure, sure.
And I think I've persuaded Andreas, if the stars are in alignment, obviously it's pitch dark out and not a good night to build a dry stone wall, but I am hoping that next year, we'll do this on one of the speaker series evenings where it doesn't get dark till 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And we can do it outside, and maybe
In June of next year, we're going to have a dry stack stone wall building workshop in Tuscany, Italy. And whoever wants to start signing up now, let's do that.
right, but maybe we'll have a dry stone mini workshop at Silburn in July.
And I would be, and without a joke, I would be happy to, if people are interested in doing that, I would be happy to host that. Absolutely. I enjoy this work very, very much. And so there's lots to learn, and very rewarding to put a hammer in your hand and shape some stone and place it in. It is just like with many things in life, not as easy as it looks.
So you talked about crush and run. I don't know what that is,
Okay.
and perhaps some of the others don't either.
How can people not know what crush and run is?
Uh,
Okay, crush and run is the technical term is CR6, and so it's a crushed gravel. It's a limestone product that usually we buy it at the Texas quarry in Cockeysville. And so what it means is it is a product that starts as a fine sand to about a 3/4 inch gravel. And we use that on just about all walking or driving surfaces because it compacts really well. But in fact, it will allow water to go through. That is usually our firm base in Maryland. And we like it a lot because in Maryland, since we do have frost here in the winter, this material has flexibility and it allows this patio to go up and this patio to go down, and without any cracked mortar joints when we do a dry laid patio or wall for that matter.
So you said you dig 8 inches,
Yep.
and you put 4 inches of the crush and run down,
Correct.
and then you just,
And so that's what we do when we are building stone walls, but also for patios, the excavation is 8 inches, then 4 inches of crush and run, and 2 inches, 2.5 inches of stone dust. So that is the same product. It's a limestone product, but it does not have the large gravel pieces in it. That product also because it is a broken stone, it has a tendency of really compacting very well. So when I set a patio stone, I make this material, the stone dust, like the consistency of yogurt. So very creamy. I put the hose in there and make it really wet. And then I set the stone until this yogurt squeezes out the sides. And then I know the stone is set well. There are no air pockets underneath. That's how we lay. Not everyone does that. So please don't expect that this is the law, but this is what I have found is the best way of laying a patio. Natural stone.
And the stones that I've seen in a lot of the walls are totally flat, and I guess that's the blue stone. But what about the stones, the old ones that are, shaped however they're shaped?
Right. Yeah, and of course, that is where experience comes into play. So the people that really know how to build a wall, they look at a stone and they know where it fits. When we look at these old, beautiful freestanding walls in Maine and New England, this is fieldstone. This was collected out of the fields when they were plowing and they're running into stone. They're throwing it to the edges, and eventually they had so much stone, they built walls. That really takes a person that knows what they're looking at and build these walls. I have to say something that you may not like to hear, but it's over the years I have learned that a true dry stack wall eats up an enormous amount of stone because you have to build it really thick. Because a dry stack wall, if you don't build it thick enough, if you just build the surface, the face, as we call it, with a little bit of a pitch back, this wall will tip back over time and will stop retaining the soil. So when I build walls, I use all kinds of leftover bricks and whatever in the back of the wall with a little bit of mortar. So the face itself is dry. I do use some mortar only for stability. Water can still penetrate through, but it's a much, much longer lasting wall than a true dry stack wall, which, like I said, I can build that as well, but it eats up enormous amounts of stone.
So that's for the retaining wall.
Correct.
But suppose you were just going to build like the New England farmers.
Mm-hmm. The freestanding wall.
A freestanding wall.
Right.
And it has to go and narrow towards the top.
That is about the highest art of wall building. And if you are ever out on the Maryland line, cross over the Maryland line on York Road, and then on your right-hand side, you will see Balducci stone. Balducci stone, just about a year ago, a young fella has built a freestanding wall, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's built out of Western Maryland fieldstone. And this wall, yes, it tapers. It has a very wide base, and then it tapers from both sides and becomes less wide on the top. It's a gorgeous wall to look at.
On the top?
That wall actually does not have a coping. I really have to take another look at it. It's not capped. But that being said, there's another wall that I think, two walls that really come to mind. One is on Butler Road in the little town of Butler. When you're traveling on Falls Road, you make a left-hand turn on Butler, and then it's on the left-hand side. It's the most beautiful wall I know in Maryland. And that was built by Primo, which is an old Italian stonemason. Primo cannot stand straight anymore because he has built too many walls in his life, but it's an absolutely phenomenal wall. If you see this wall, you will say, wow. So
questions? I mean, what can we tell you, or what can Andreas tell you about pervious surfaces, building stone walls, stone patios, that you would like to know. Yeah. Oh, and I just stuck this in because it made me laugh at the end, about failing to plan is planning to fail. It was someone's description of his experience trying to build a patio. And just something to make you laugh. But Andreas would be happy to answer any and all questions about the above, and rock walls and stone walls and coping and.
Absolutely. And certainly, I also would like to recommend places where you can buy material. I mean, I'm a natural stone worker. And so I buy my material at either way, Balducci on the Maryland line, or Badolado in Cockeysville, or Green Spring Stone in Jarrettsville. There is another store that is close to the airport, the Stone Store. Those are about the 4 local places where there are others, but those are the major places. But Badolado probably the biggest of all, was the greatest selection of stone. Badolado in Cockeysville.
And do they quarry their own stone?
No, none of these places. Well, Balducci used to, but none of these places quarry their own stone anymore. They're all buy-in. Yeah.
Well, who does quarry stone?
Yeah, most of the bluestone comes from
Pennsylvania,
northern PA, or New York. That's where most bluestones come from. That's where also a lot of fieldstone comes from, the Pennsylvania fieldstone. And I have to admit, it also creates a little bit of a conflict, because when we are thinking about the, being environmentally responsible, to collect fieldstone is really raping the land. They do that when they're cutting the forest, and then they go with heavy machinery into the forest and pick any kind of rock that there is, or take all old walls down in order to palletize it and to sell it. So yeah, I think it is not without conflict to know where the stone really comes from. And afterwards, these hillsides are devastated. Just
Kind of the strip mining of stone quarry.
yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm going to ask a question if I can.
Sure.
So we have a late stone patio, and the biggest problem we have is keeping the weeds down. It just loves to grow there. And
Right.
And, if moss just did it, it would be fine, but some of it's in the sun, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
So what do you suggest about that?
Yeah. To grow moss is one of the great challenges that I've not mastered yet. I think we all are romantic about moss, no? Well,
it's better than weeds, it's just.
I agree. Well, that's why we are using polymer sand. Because polymer sand really, it is a flexible material. So we are raking out the joints by about 1 inch, and then sweep in polymer sand, hose it up with water, and then it becomes a rubbery material where I would say 90% of any weed cannot grow.
But it's still pervious, right?
It is still pervious, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Andreas.
By far less than just stone dust.
Good.
Plant seeds of plants you like. I mean, in my back garden, even though it was mortared, I've got dozens and dozens of coral bells that come up between the rocks.
Yeah.
And
but
mine are volunteers, but
well, you're lucky you. Mine are usually
my
daffodils.
sage comes up, and I even had a lobelia come up in the rocks. But you're welcome to come and harvest seeds from some of my gazillion coral bells and fling them out, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? It's Debbie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, so you know what? the low creeping time in the sun between the rocks is so happy because it's baking in the rocks. It doesn't need, it looks so pretty. And when you step on it, you get a little bit of aromatherapy.
Right.
So that's worked really well for me when I had sun. Now everything is part shade, Patricia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Andreas.
Hi, how are you? Good evening.
Good, I'm good. So I have a very lovely challenge. I live on a hill and the neighbors above me have an impervious driveway that is tilted directly into my house, into my garden on the side of my house. And on top of that, their drain, of course, their gutter, of course, is always clogged. So water's pouring off of the drain and down the hill over this surface into my little, and their driveway goes all the way up to the edge of the property. So my little garden in between their driveway and my house is my only buffer. So my question is, what kind of, like, can I put like a big lumpy berm of clay or something along the edge of this? Or how can I stop? Right now I have liriope and I just don't want to keep it. I'm sort of exploiting liriope for its root base. But I would love to not have liriope and have some type of a bump up or lump or something that would sort of stop the water. Have you had any opportunity to face this kind of challenge, and how have you solved it?
Yeah, it would be something I really need to see, but I mean, of course, a lot of people use gravel these days that use river jacks, where there's potential erosion, where water funnels. We try to break the force of the water, the speed of the water, and the water needs to go somewhere. So yeah, that's in many cases, that's what we do. We could also, of course, place boulders, baby boulders, and plant it really heavy. That's why you're using liriope, because it's like a mat, no?
Yeah, exactly. So I was hoping to direct it more. The hill goes towards my house and also towards the back of my house. So I was hoping sort of on a diagonal. So I was hoping rather than capture the water into rocks, which then seeps into my foundation, I was hoping that I could direct, which has also been really fun. I was hoping to direct it more towards the back end of my house, where I have lots of water loving plants to soak it up, but I have to sort of move it down in that direction.
Right.
So,
I did not really mean that you want to use the gravel as a filtration system for inviting water into your house. I meant what I have done quite often, and that may be really what you're asking for. I've built dry stream beds, and so those are very nice looking ornamental little rivers that are always dry until it rains. And then they really serve a purpose and give the water direction. And also those, of course, a dry stream bed provides an opportunity, planting opportunity, no?
Yeah.
When you
Well,
can
I'll
shape
have
it,
to
you
have
can
you over for
create
looks.
microclimates, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. I'll have to have you over for a look-see. Thanks.
Sure.
Other questions? Well,
No.
if you have enjoyed this, Ashley, do you want to close with some, words for the Master Gardeners?
Hey, Sandra, have you checked the chat?
Oh,
I think I asked my chat.
all right, let me check that. Sorry. I can't even find my cursor. Here it is.
How do you?
Have you used a driveway product that is a heavy-duty plastic grid that contains small stones? How does it work? What's the lifespan?
I think it contains small stones with the grid. If so, how well does it work, and what is the lifespan of the system like that? Not exactly sure what product you are talking about. I have used grid systems. In fact, right here in Roland Park, a client of mine wanted a gravel driveway. And in order for that gravel to stay put, we used like a comb grid system, which was plastic, and it did initially hold the gravel in place. Ultimately, after driving on it for a month or two, all the gravel pushed down, and then you see this grid system, which is ugly. And that is a little bit my complaint about these systems, that yes, they keep the gravel in place, but ultimately it comes through and you see this ugly plastic. Sorry, I wish I could be more positive about it. There's also these concrete grid systems that we can buy. They're in Europe used a lot for emergency exits, like for fire trucks, etc. And so they are used for these surfaces because they do not experience daily driving. Here, people think they can drive on these things every day and have grass or any other perennial in between. Well, if you do this every day, you kill for sure whatever is being planted in these concrete grid stones. That's my experience. So there you can in fact put gravel in between. I think that's a much better solution than trying to have grass or a perennial of sorts in those little pockets.
So where's the wow-free freestanding wall?
Okay. The wow wall is, in fact, there's another one that Primo had built, which is also, I think, a wow. But the wall that I'm referring to is on Butler Road, when you're coming off Falls Road, and I would think you're going west. You can only go west on Butler Road. And then it's on your left-hand side after about a quarter mile. It's a freestanding wall, absolutely spectacular. But he also has built a wall last year on, I would think, that is Ruxton Road, right in the curve before you're coming to the light rail, coming off 83. You're driving right at it. You're looking right at it. It's another spectacular wall.
Okay. What mistakes are typically made when trying to work with gravel in yards?
I would think in general, people do underestimate how gravel always travels. And so gravel does not want to stay put. If you walk on it or if you drive on it, it travels. So you want to retain it. And that could be done with steel edging, could be done with cobblestones, with a brick border, anything that keeps gravel in place, because it will not stay, especially round gravel. So river gravels, because it is round, it rolls. If you use a gravel that is broken, so it can lock itself in, it has a tendency of staying better in place.
Let's see what I'll do.
Building a living wall would be fun. What material would you need to get started? Okay. There are various systems actually out on the market. Unfortunately, the ones that I have seen are concrete systems that are basically like shoeboxes, and you stack them up, and each of these shoeboxes then hosts soil that you can plant into. Those are exterior walls that I've seen being used and being done. I'm trying to think about the company in Baltimore off Howard Street. They do quite a bit with this. Also, my colleague Ashley Kittner from International Landscapes in Design, he has built walls like this. And afterwards planted them, and they become completely green. So even so, initially it is concrete. Ultimately, I think it is a really nice looking wall, and also functions very well.
Could you describe what Western Maryland stone looks like?
Okay, Western Maryland stone in general is a very soft edged, tan colored stone that in general has a tendency of being more flat than bulky and fat. I say that because PA, for example, if you look at PA boulders, they are much fatter, they have much more body, where it seems like Western Maryland has a tendency of being flatter. But tan colored versus brown or reddish.
Okay, wait. Oops.
Corridor
What about
is a happy
wood chips?
walker. Yes.
Yeah, because we're going from the bottom up. So
Yeah.
what about wood chips?
What about wood chips? Well, wood chips is another inexpensive permeable surface. I just recently did a project in Guilford where the architect had asked for wood chip pathways. I think it is a wonderful product. Make sure that the wood chips are clean, meaning that there are not having, don't ask the tree guy to give you all his wood chips if he has all the leaves and weeds and thistle and whatever he ground up in there. They're selling wood chips at Holland's Organics on Falls Road, and that is a playground mix, which is perfectly clean material without weeds in them. That I would recommend, absolutely. Corvallis?
Yeah,
Yes.
how do you keep the weeds? Oh, that's Patricia's, right? Okay,
I can add to the mulch, which is the most terrific ground cover because it's constantly amending the soil. And I also do not buy anything anymore, but I did purchase a used electric chipper. And so whenever there's just fallen material on my street or anywhere, I chop it up and I can just keep adding to that pile. And
Right.
it's a lovely regenerative process that that does everything right. And I use also a little bit of metal edging. I get the brown, it's in brown at Lowe's. So you don't really see it. I don't really want to highlight that kind of stuff, but I have this brown edge, this metal edging I use just to keep it tidy, just to keep it in place, and you can bend it and make nice curves in it. And I've had it for years, and it's just been terrific and great for erosion control too.
Right.
someone asked about shoveling snow.
So, and just about mulch, I think it is fun to walk on mulch. No, I mean to walk on such a soft surface instead of on stone, concrete, or asphalt. There's a question here: what is the best pervious surface for a driveway when it comes to snow shoveling? Well, I may come to the end of my wisdom here. I don't know. That is really the quick answer, because obviously if you use gravel and in the wintertime, you push that gravel all over the place. My driveway at home is made out of millings. And so I have a left and right cobblestone border, and then I use millings. So what is millings? Millings is asphalt, ground up asphalt. So it's a recycled product. When they're resurfacing a road, they're grinding 2-3 inches of that asphalt, and that is pervious and so super inexpensive. I can push that material. I can use my skid loader and push the snow off, and it stays pretty well in place.
What does it look like though?
Looks like ground up asphalt.
Sounds attractive.
And it's cheap. You can get 20 tons for $60.
Wow.
Yeah. The asphalt guys love to make some extra money on the side.
Well, there's a driveway near me, and it's a relatively short driveway, but they have that it's some sort of a laid out grid, not pavers, but it's a grid, and it has grass growing in little circles in the middle. I haven't been walking that way for that long, so I don't know how long it lasts. Do you have experience with that?
I think that could possibly be this concrete grid that I talked about earlier, which I think it is wonderful for occasional use, but a daily use, you will definitely kill any grass that's in there. Yeah.
So it's fine for a house driveway, but not for,
Well, and then even for a house driver, if you park your car there and drive on it every day to go to work or whatever you do, I don't think it is practical. Yeah.
all right.
Oops.
Other
So
questions?
Andreas, that ground up macadam stuff, it's made of oil, right? It's an oil-based product.
Yeah.
Sure, it is. Yes,
Yeah,
asphalt.
so I worry, and maybe I'm just a neurotic person, but I worry about that and the pollution.
you are,
in the
Deb.
bay. Well, I am a neurotic person, I am, but besides that, I am worried about the pollution in the
love
bay,
you.
you know, having that ground up surface and you have the water flowing through it, and it's just breaking down and it's just adding to pollutants. What is your thought on that? I'm not a
It's gonna go
scientist.
somewhere,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah,
It's
it kind of feels not right to me, but am I overthinking this?
Mhm.
Mm.
I have no reports that the oils that are obviously are being used to produce asphalt would leach out when the material is ground up. I've never heard anyone talk about that.
you haven't experienced
Oh.
it at your
No,
house.
no, I have not. My water does not taste bad, and it's being tested. So the water quality on my property is wonderful. And my driveway is quite long. It's about 600 feet long.
So in a sense, that's a better test because he does draw his water from that area and it gets tested. If yours,
Absolutely.
you would never know.
That's a terrific test, and that's what I love about a garden. It's a laboratory, isn't it?
Absolutely, sure, yeah.
So any other questions? I think we got everything that was in the chat. If I missed your chat question, holler. And if not, we hope you've enjoyed it, learned a lot, and put on your calendar to
Workshop in Tuscany.
or at Silver, whichever works for you.
Whatever comes first, right?
Whichever one fits in your schedule. But